This meeting will now come to order. In an effort to prevent the spread of novel coronavirus, COVID-19, this meeting is being conducted by video teleconference. We welcome those of you joining us via the meeting portal and hope that everyone is staying safe and healthy. I will now ask Vice Chair Justin Mitchell to read the Epsb mission statement. Mr. Mitchell.
The Education Professional Standards Board, in full collaboration and cooperation with its education partners, promotes high levels of student achievement by establishing and enforcing rigorous professional standards for preparation, certification, and responsible and ethical behavior of all professional educators in Kentucky.
Thank you. On September 7th, Governor Beshear appointed Diane Berry to the Education Professional Standards Board to represent members of local boards of education. Leah Sharp from the Office of Legal Services will administer the oath to Ms. Berry to swear her into the EPSB. Thank you both for joining us.
Welcome, Ms. Berry. I will read the oath in its entirety and ask you to raise your right hand and swear or affirm at the conclusion of the oath. I do solemnly swear, or affirm as the case may be, that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this Commonwealth, and be faithful and true to the Commonwealth of Kentucky so long as I continue a citizen thereof, and that I will faithfully execute, to the best of my ability, the office of board member of the Education Professional Standards Board according to law, and I do further solemnly swear or affirm that since the adoption of the present Constitution, I, being a citizen of this state, have not fought a duel with deadly weapons within this state, nor out of it, nor have I sent or accepted a challenge to fight a duel with deadly weapons, nor have I acted as second in carrying a challenge, nor aided or assisted any person thus offending, so help me God. Ms. Berry?
I swear.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Berry, if you will, introduce yourself to the board.
Well, first, this is very intimidating that I can't be seen, so I'm not sure what I look like. But good morning, all. Again, my name is Diane Berry. I am honored to serve in this capacity. I grew up in a small town, Boston, Kentucky, in Nelson County. I am a product of public school in Nelson County. I am married. I have 2 grown daughters, 1 granddaughter, of course, apple of my eye. And the old saying, if you could skip the kids and get to the grandkids, that's the best part of it. So, like I said, I appreciate the honor. I am honored to have this honor. You've made me feel welcome, and I will do the very best I can in this capacity. So thank you very much.
Thank you and welcome. We are glad to have you on the board. Sharon Chesser joins us today as board secretary. Ms. Chesser, thank you for joining us, and will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Amanda Ellis, Susan Reber, Diane Berry.
Diane Berry, present.
Elijah Edwards, Kathy Gunn, Donna Hedgepath.
Donna Hedgepath, present.
Tracy Hunt.
Tracy Hunt, present.
Jacqueline Mayfield. Justin Mitchell.
Justin Mitchell, present.
Sherry Powers.
Sherry Powers, present.
Lisa Rosinski.
Lisa Rodzinski, present.
Amber Snell. Carmen Souder.
Carmen Souder, present.
Beth Spradlin.
Beth Spradlin, present.
Wade Stanfield. Wade Stanfield. Julian Vasquez Heilig.
Julian Vasquez Heilig, present.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, present.
We have quorum.
Thank you. I would like to remind all members that we need 9 members present to have a quorum, and we are sitting at 10 right now. Please always leave your camera on if you have to step away. And if something comes up, please notify us immediately since we are right there on the edge of a quorum. We will now move on to the consent items. The following items are listed on the agenda as consent items. Letter A, approval of the August 16, 2021 EPSB meeting minutes. Letter B, board approval for the Professional Learning Board's online courses. Letter C, request to offer program at an off-site location, Campbellsville University. And letter D, emergency non-certified school personnel program. Does anyone wish to remove any of the items from the consent agenda for further discussion? Having received no requests to remove items from the consent agenda, is there a motion to approve consent items A through D?
Sherry Powers. I make a motion to approve consent items A through D.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Is there a second?
Justin Mitchell, second.
Mr. Mitchell with the second. The motion before the board is to approve consent items A through D. As this meeting is being conducted via video teleconference, we will have a roll call vote for each vote. Ms. Chesser will call the roll. I would like to remind each board member to please state their name, pause for a moment, and then state their vote. Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Berry.
Diane Berry? Yes.
Donna Hedgepath.
Donna Hedgepath, I need to recuse item C, but approve on A, B, and D.
Tracy Hunt.
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell.
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers.
Sherry Powers, approve.
Susan Reber. Lisa Rosinski.
Lisa Rodzinski, approve to all.
Carmen Souter.
Carmen Souter, approved to all.
Beth Spradlin.
Beth Spradlin, approve all.
Wade Stanfield. Julian Vasquez Heilig.
Julian Vasquez Heilig, approve all.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approved to all.
Voting is complete.
Thank you, and the motion passes. Today, Commissioner of Education and Chief Learner, Dr. Jason Glass, joins us as Executive Secretary to the EPSB. I will now recognize Commissioner Glass to provide his report. Welcome, Dr. Glass.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see all of you, and thank you for what you do as guardians and supporters of the teaching profession. I have just a few updates to make for you. I'll start with our unwelcome visitor that's been with us for about a year and a half, and that is COVID. We seem to have reached a level of stability in managing COVID in schools. That doesn't mean that we aren't still handling all the virus mitigation efforts that are necessary to keep schools open and safe. And we aren't still seeing disruptions due to quarantining and outbreaks, but we have seemed to have gotten to a place where that's manageable, at least for the time being. The changes that the legislature put in place with the special session seem to be helping in terms of bringing stability around funding. So that was a major concern, that the disruptions that we were seeing to attendance would have a detrimental impact on funding for next year. So one of the things the legislature did was create some stability using a historical count number and projecting that into the future to create some stability around funding. They also added temporary remote instruction days that would allow schools and districts to shift to that NTI-like instruction, either at a school, a grade, or a classroom level, whereas before all they had was a district-wide change under NTI. So that's additional flexibility. They also brought in some flexibility around using other employees and retirees temporarily in instructional roles. And of course, they ended the State Board of Education's universal masking requirement, but over 99% of school districts reinstated that themselves following, so it had a little practical impact. So we saw the legislature move forward with those stabilizing elements. They did put limits on a lot of that, and we hope that it's enough. And we are seeing declines in cases around the state. One of the things that Dr. Stack imposed upon me back in August when all this was firing way up is he looked into the future and said, I think it's going to be sometime mid-October we'll start seeing an exponential decline in this, because he called it an epidemic of the unvaccinated. That the virus is spreading through and infecting and making sick and killing mostly people who are unvaccinated. There are certainly exceptions to that, but that's the group. And once it runs out of unvaccinated bodies to infect, you start seeing the exponential decline. So that may be what we're seeing now. It certainly looks like the numbers are tailing down nationally and here in Kentucky. Still not out of the woods yet. Just as a benchmark of comparison, if we look at our positivity rates right now, that's about where we were in early February. And so you can recall the prevalence of the virus there and where we are now, but it's certainly in a declining pattern, and that's good to see. We are seeing drops nationally around 28% this morning in the number of cases reported, about 23% drop in hospitalizations. Death rates are not falling as fast, but they lag the other two. So if we can get the prevalence of the virus down in our communities, that reduces the number of cases, the number of hospitalizations, the number of people that go into ICU and on ventilators, and the number of people that die. So all trending in the right direction, but we have to stay vigilant a little longer. Other important news to take note of: we had a court ruling from Judge Shepard on Friday around House Bill 563. You may recall that was the school choice bill that expanded inter-district school choice between public school districts, and also added onto it the private school tax credit neo-voucher system that they joined together with that. And then they wrapped into that a promise of kindergarten funding that they funded for 1 year as part of that. So Judge Shepard ruled on a number of different levels that it was unconstitutional and questioned some of the sort of layering together of elements of that bill that were necessary to get it passed. Almost certainly this will be appealed, but right now it puts the brakes on both the inter-district school choice and the private school tax credit scheme that the legislature put in place. But again, we're almost certainly going to see this appealed up to the highest levels to reach some kind of determination. Honestly, I was a little surprised by the ruling. I was very clear about my positions on House Bill 563, why I thought it was bad policy and just poorly thought through legislation. But I did not expect that it would be struck down on state constitutional issues. There are all sorts of things to criticize about this bill, and I've made my points clear on that. But I did not expect that, so we'll see how that plays out. Shifting gears, and now that we're sort of, possibly, I hope, in the waning days of managing COVID, eyes now turn to the legislative session. The State Board of Education raised up increasing state funding for education as one of their major priorities, including the stabilizing and making permanent the infusion of dollars related to kindergarten education. So that was just a 1-year provision that was put in place. The legislature actually needs to make that ongoing. That seems to be something that has widespread support, continuing with that kindergarten funding. But one of the things that we know from legislatures is anytime that something is really important to everyone, it can be used as a bargaining chip. So we have to pay attention to what happens or what kind of deal has to be made in order to keep kindergarten funding going. Remember, it was hitched initially to the school choice, interdistrict school choice, and the private school voucher scheme legislation. So all of that was sort of wrapped together. So we may see some new form of that come forth as they consider how they might get around the court ruling that struck that down. So that could be how that manifests itself, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if we saw some kind of conditions hitched to kindergarten funding, just because it's something that would be disruptive and detrimental to schools if it were taken away now that it's been put in place. But as soon as people really want something, it becomes a point for leverage. We also see starting back up again all of the debates around critical race theory. This is national partisan politics, hyper-partisan politics that's come into our state education system and into our even some of our local school boards. I've also been very clear around my positions around any elements that seek to gag or limit classroom discussions and debates and learning, that I'm opposed to these, but it's something that has a lot of attention. And I think the Republican Party in the state will be under some pressure to deliver on some form of this because they have a large constituency that wants some form of it. The versions of this that are coming forward are different depending on different states, and we may see the legislature consider all forms of that. Right now, we've got two pre-filed bills, one that reduces funding if any elements of critical race theory, and they're so vaguely and broadly defined that that's I think one of the problems with it is the pre-filed bills have said, and I'm paraphrasing, anything that really has to do with diversity, equity, and inclusion, they're sort of saying is critical race theory, or things that make people uncomfortable, which I think I'm wondering how we're going to create a standard around that in education. But we may see some form of this move forward. The penalties do include reduction in funding as one of them, or as it relates to you, there are licensure questions that can be raised or licenses taken away. And we've seen that form of it take form in other states or be enacted in other states. And so I think Epsb, you have to be paying attention to these as well, because it may come to you if they pass a critical race theory gag bill, and then someone is accused of this, there may need to be an investigation, and this board may be the ones that have to take action on someone's licensure and that. And so that's a terrible situation to put the students, the educator, and this board into, but that's part of the conversations that we're in. Other elements or ways that this has come about is the legislatures in some states have created these sort of hyper transparency bills where you have to post every resource and curricular material that you're using in advance, which that's really onerous provision, but that's another way people go about it, is either creating this penalty or creating such a hyper transparency and workload associated with it that the effect on either case is self-censorship. It makes educators and even students unable or unwilling to raise issues that may have to do with diversity, equity, inclusion, history, or anything that makes people uncomfortable. So again, I've been clear about my positions on these bills. I think they're ill-advised, un-American, and don't do anything to really prepare our kids for the complex world that they're inheriting, nor are they good for our democracy. But this is, again, hyper-partisan politics at play, so we'll have to see how that shakes out once the legislature gets in place. Turning to brighter news, I would invite you all and point to the Education Summit that we have planned for November 1st and 2nd. Love to see as many of you there as is possible. I know it's during weekdays, so everybody's super busy. We also have KET, and we're really grateful for their support. They're going to be live streaming it and recording it and playing back playing back the summit as well as a condensed version. So if you can't be there in person, we've tried to create lots of opportunities where you could watch it virtually as it's happening, or watch recorded versions, or even if you're really limited on time, just highlights, the highlight reels as well. So we hope that this is the launching point for Kentucky's next chapter in education, and something that's built on the voices and preferences of Kentuckians. So this is not a politically driven event. We really wanted to hear from people in the state, students, teachers, parents, business leaders and industry leaders around what's working and what we need to do differently going forward. So it's a visioning process, and so that'll be the goal of that, is to start that conversation. So it's not the governor's agenda, not my agenda, not the state boards, not any legislator's agenda. It really is something that we're trying to build for the future based on what we're hearing from Kentuckians about their aspirations for Kentucky schools, what's working, and what they'd like to see going forward. So November 1st and 2nd, and you can look on the department's website. The registration is free. We are requiring proof of vaccination or a recent COVID test as a condition of entry, but we're limiting the attendance some, but there's still plenty of spots available, so we'd love to see some of you there. I don't know if Susan Reber made it on. I think I need to turn things over to her. Sounds like no. Okay, well, if Susan isn't on to give the update from the Education and Workforce Cabinet, perhaps she'll be able to do that later, Madam Chair. I also should note that Amanda Ellis is not able to be with us from the Council on Post-Secondary Education, but she did provide a written update from CPE for you to take note of. And with that, I will turn things over to Associate Commissioner Byron Darnell to give you an update from the Office of Educator Licensure and Evaluation. Thank you all so much. I am grateful for you and appreciate the work that you do, and have a great meeting today.
Thank you, Dr. Glass.
Well, good morning, everyone. I hope you all are off to a good start on this Monday. I believe some may be coming back off of fall break. I know a lot of them were scheduled for last week, so this may be a little bit of a lingering effect coming in. But if you were on fall break, I sincerely hope that you had a chance to enjoy yourself, detach and relax. And if you have fall break coming, then I wish the same for you. Thank you all for your commitment, for being champions for education across the state of Kentucky, most importantly, our educators. Your time is duly noted and appreciated in the role that you play here for the Educational Professional Standards Board. Just a few updates for you to give you a little snapshot of what is taking place in OELE. Most recently, there was the Continuous Improvement Summit that took place in Lexington, and that was primarily through the School Improvement Division of KDE, but we were able to have two presentations, one for the Grow Your Own Future Teachers, Planting the Seed, and another for using teacher recruitment and retention data to grow a diverse workforce and improve student achievement. So the two presentations went rather well. They were well attended, and it was just a great opportunity by our counterparts to allow us a chance to talk about opportunities to continue to fortify and grow our profession. Shortly after our August meeting, there was an exciting announcement. On August 16th, 10 districts were awarded $50,000 Grow Your Own grants, and this is in cooperation with the Kentucky Academy for Equity in Teaching, or CATE. So there were 10 districts that will be involved in the process of developing a Grow Your Own pipeline based on the funds appropriated through this grant and with the Council on Post-Secondary Education. So we'll be working hand in hand to learn, guide, and develop ideas for districts to begin to capitalize on, particularly individuals within their districts that can potentially have a possibility of becoming fully certified teachers. Also, was excited to announce that there's Kentucky New Teacher Support Certainly know that this is an area of focus, at least for me personally, with the abandonment of KTIP and then prior to that KPIP for administrators. We really have not had any formal support and induction into the profession, and certainly worth a continued conversation and continuing to try to find something systemic. But we do have funding available for our EPP partners, for completers who are first-year teachers from, and this includes the last 2 years, from 2020 to 2022, at a rate of $1,500 per new teacher. And so our university providers have an opportunity to apply for this funding. And this is, of course, to provide professional learning, mentoring and coaching, and anything related to support and induction. But at least excited to appropriate funds to help with the most recent 2 cohorts of new teacher candidates in some form or fashion, and opportunity to learn and see what else we can do to continue that conversation. Also excited to announce that the Educators Rising State Conference has been set for March 3rd. And that will take place at Bellarmine University. And of course, this is our high school organizations that used to be Future Educators of America, now titled Educators Rising. It is a career and technical pathway, teaching and learning pathway. And this will be an opportunity for students to come and compete at the state level for those that are involved in the chapters that are across the state. So excited to bring these individuals to Louisville and capitalize on their enthusiasm for our profession. Also, most of you all, or some of you all may be familiar that there was an RFP for a new platform that was a little over a year ago. So it's been in the works for a while, but Randa being the awardee for that. And essentially the work is underway. And they have been a good partner in trying to sort of get the nuts and bolts of what they need to begin to sort of devise the new platform based on the current platform that EPSB uses. As of now, the goal is to pilot districts in early spring, approximately February 2022, somewhere right in that window, and then ideally, if all goes well, completion of the project by May 2022. So they've been a good partner. The work is underway, and just personally, frankly, excited about the possibilities of this new system. Having now worked in the current system more than I ever have before. So I'm excited about the possibilities that they bring to make this more efficient and simple. I want to say thank you to you all. I've received just sort of random and anecdotal feedback based on the easing of retiree restrictions, as well as the ability for student teachers to fill in and substitute roles. Just in talking with peers, principals, superintendents, I can just tell you that they are grateful for any opportunity to utilize this. I wasn't quite sure how the retiree would play out, but apparently it is attracting some and helping districts to utilize some of our most valued teachers. So I'm excited to hear that. Of course, Senate Bill 1 sunsets in January, so we will see how that goes once the legislators return. But I think it's always good feedback for us as well in the successes that we can take from these opportunities. I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Kentucky Teachers of the Year announcements. Willie Edward Taylor Carver, who is an English and French teacher at Montgomery County High School, was announced as the Kentucky Teacher of the Year. And then also, Hallie Booth is an 8th grade science teacher at Valley Shannon in Boone County. She is the middle school representative. And then Ashley Ritchie is a 2nd grade teacher at Beechwood Elementary and Beechwood Independent, represents the primary elementary level. So 3 wonderful ambassadors. Mr. Taylor Carver will go on to participate in the National Teacher of the Year program that Donnie Piercy is currently doing for the state of Kentucky, and extremely excited and honored to have these individuals as our teacher representatives. We also just recently closed the Go Teach Kentucky 2022 Ambassador application. So we will have a new crop, if you will, of Go Teach Kentucky ambassadors very soon. And certainly very appreciative for the individuals that took the time to apply, and very excited about the opportunities to work with them. They are certainly a tremendous voice across our state and representative of what we want to be in terms of aspirations for our teachers. Also, the Kentucky Academy for Equity in Teaching, or CATE, we have completed the A1 and A2 of 4 modules that are part of the Equity Toolkit Dashboard / Playbook. And so starting here in a couple weeks, there will be training on the first 2 modules at the local cooperatives. So the work has been underway, and I appreciate all of the work from OELE put into producing these modules. And this is also in cooperation with the Council on Post-Secondary Education. So it also is a wonderful collaborative moment between OELE, EPSB, and CPE. So certainly many hands make light work, and this is a great example of that. A couple more things. Program Review Committee continues to examine and make recommendations regarding quality measures, and that's in accordance with the changes of KAR 5010. And very honored to have our EPP partners advising as we begin to work through and meeting the requirements of this change that are due to take effect in February. And then finally, the OELE and the Office of Teaching and Learning are involved in a state group around high quality instructional resources. This is essentially best practices to ensure teacher candidates understand a framework for identifying quality evidence-based instructional resources and materials. And so we have an EPP advisory that we are getting feedback from. And so that work is well underway, and appreciate our university partners in helping us continue this conversation. And then, as Dr. Glass mentioned, the KDE Summit is coming up November 1st and 2nd, so OELE will play a role in this, and honored to do so. But thank you all so very much. I appreciate your time, and certainly at your disposal should you ever need anything else from me, or always welcome to conversations and feedback. So most appreciated.
Thank you very much, Dr. Darnell. I believe Dr. Glass has already left us, but thanks again to Dr. Glass for those updates. And members, I would like to remind you that Dr. Ellis has provided the report from the Council on Post-Secondary Education, so please check your emails for that. We now move on to report from the chair, and I have a few items. First, I would like to recognize our vice chair, Justin Mitchell, on being named Kentucky's 2021 Kentucky History Teacher of the Year. The Gilder Lehrman Institute of American History recognized his achievements, and I think we might have mentioned it at the August meeting, but I don't remember if you were able to join us. So it is a significant enough accomplishment that we want to recognize you again and say congratulations, and we are very proud of you and glad to be serving with you. I would also like to just take a moment to pause and reflect on all educators and those people who work in education, as well as our students who have been impacted by COVID-19, including several deaths across the state. And so those of you watching at home know that we continue to do everything that we can in our capacity as a board to minimize the effects that this is having. And we're going to discuss several items today to hopefully provide some relief and some expansion of assistance in the area of teaching. I know we're all battling sub coverage right now, and our own educators. And so I just wanted to take a moment to say our hearts and prayers are with everyone in education and everyone impacted by the loss of these educators and students and support staff. Next, we have one information item. This item is presented to the board for review and discussion only. Information item A is presented by Margaret Hawkinsmith, and I am on page 42 of the agenda book. Ms. Hawkinsmith?
Good morning.
Good
Can
morning.
you hear me?
Yes.
Information item A relates to the board's revised agreement with the National Accreditor of Teacher Preparation, CAPE, or the Council for the Accreditation of Educator Preparation. The first and most recent agreement the board approved with CAPE was in 2016 and reflects some outdated policies and procedures. The updated agreement also addresses the board's recent revisions to the accreditation regulation 16 KAR 5010. Most important highlights of the updated agreement are no longer will there be joint accreditation reviews, national and state, with CAPE, since the revised regulation now doesn't require state accreditation in addition to national accreditation of an EPP. It reflects the state's use of the CAPE standards for state-only accreditation reviews. It addresses the change in state representation on future CAPE national accreditation only visits. There will be one CAPE-trained Kentucky site reviewer on all CAPE national accreditation visits for a Kentucky EPP. The agreement also reflects references to updates in CAPE policies and procedures. The agreement has been reviewed by the EPSB staff and CAPE staff and is ready for the EPSB review process and internal KDE contract review.
Thank you, Ms. Hawkinsmith. Next, we will move on to action items. These items are presented to the board for action and will require a motion and a vote on each action item. Action item A is also presented by Ms. Hawkinsmith, and we are on page 52 of the agenda book. Ms. Hawkinsmith.
Thanks. The revised regulation for accreditation and program review, 16 KAR 5010, which this board approved in June, allows for the board to approve national accreditors of educator preparation in Kentucky. Historically, the board has recognized only one accreditor, but there is a new national accreditor of educator preparation, AQEP, which stands for the Association for Advancing Quality in Educator Preparation. AQEP has applied to the board for approval. AQEP, formed in 2017, was recognized by the Council for Higher Education Accreditation as a programmatic accreditor in May 2021 and currently serves 162 providers in 27 states and territories. The Council for Higher Education Accreditation, or CHIA, is the industry benchmark standard for recognition or approval of institutional or programmatic accreditors. AQEP's proposal for approval by the board included confirmation that the accreditor has established rigorous standards for educator preparation that align with requirements set forth in Kentucky Revised Statutes 161.028, which the board was able to review in their packet. The accreditor possesses the capacity for staff and resources to carry out the operation of the organization. AQEP has established a system of quality assurance for standards, policies, and procedures that are reviewed on a cyclical basis. AQEP maintains policies and procedures in a governance structure that support the established accreditation and decision-making processes. And they submitted a letter of support and interest from the Kentucky EPP, Transylvania University, and the University of Kentucky is a member of their organization. Based on the contents of AQEP's proposal and the staff review, the staff recommends approval of this national accreditor of educator preparation.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Hawkinsmith? So the action question before the board is, should the EPSB approve AAQEP as an accreditor recognized by the EPSB? Is there a motion?
This is Julian Vasquez Heilig. I motion that we approve AQUEP as a national creditor under the to revise 16 KAR 5010.
Thank you, Dr. Vasquez Heilig. Is there a second?
Second, Wade
Carmen
Stanfield.
Souter, I second.
Okay, I heard Mr. Stanfield second, although I heard several. Thank you. The motion before the board is to approve AQUEP as a national accreditor under the revised 16 KAR 5:010. Is there any discussion?
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely,
Donna
Dr.
Hedgepath.
Hawks. Yes.
In the informational item, and I guess this is for Ms. Hawkinsmith, you mentioned having CAPE trained states for state visits. If an institution happens to be with AQUEP, will they be trained in AQUEP for any visits, or does that, or am I getting confused?
No, so CAPE, for any CAPE national visit, any reviewer has to be CAPE trained. For any state-only accreditation visit, I'm sorry, since it's based on the CAPE standards, all state-only reviewers have to be CAPE trained. It will be the same for AQUEP. Any reviewer, state reviewer that's going to be represented, and any national reviewer for AQUEP has to be AQUEP trained.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, will you please call the roll?
Diane Berry,
Okay, Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rosinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Julian Vasquez Heilig,
Julian Vasquez Heilig, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you, and the motion passes. Next, we have action item B. I'm on page 59 of the agenda book, and it will be presented by Todd Davis. Mr. Davis?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
So the next two items I have are actually related to option 7, and I'll be presenting them, of course, individually, but for action item B, it involves CKEC. And just as a reminder, KRS 161.0408, Section 8 establishes the option 7 alternative route to certification, which allows a person in a field other than education to receive a 1-year temporary provisional certificate in elementary, middle, or secondary in grades 5 through 12, P12, to a 240-hour institute for elementary, and then the 180-hour institute is required for the middle or secondary certification. In October 2019, the Epsb revised the guidelines for submitting an application to provide an alternative route to certification institute. These guidelines require at a minimum of half of the requisite institute hours shall be completed prior to the issuance of the first temporary provisional certificate. Also in April of 2021 board meeting, CKEC, who has submitted for action item B, submitted a plan that was approved to conduct a teaching special education exceptional children learning and behavior disorders P through 12 certification route. CKEC has submitted an additional plan for this for consideration today, that is expanding their program and is requesting to add grades 8-12 biology, chemistry, English, math, social studies to their certificate program. As I mentioned, they were previously approved for the special education. And one of the differences in this program outside of the subject or content for certification is they have partnered with a different entity, which is Asbury University, also approved by the EPSB. So they're partnering with Asbury rather than the former institution in regards to these contents. The program has completed the multi-tiered review process and received a recommendation for approval based on the guidelines approved by the EPSB, OELE staff, and external review team comprised of one individual from an educator preparation provider, one from an educational cooperative, and one from a school district have reviewed and determined this meets requirements for approval. And I can take any questions at this time.
Julian Vasquez Heilig. Is this the time for comment?
Do you have questions for Mr. Davis or comment? Yes.
Both. So,
okay.
First I want to say it's an honor to represent the University of Kentucky as dean and serve as one of the representatives of the academic community on the EPSB. And I understand that we've had very little debate about recommended actions from KDE that have come before us during the past year, but I think today is a day where we need to take a very, very careful look at what's before us as members of this appointed board. We truly are the vanguard for the education profession in Kentucky. Why do I say this? Because I believe that this is one of the items that we need to take a very careful look at on behalf of the young people and families in the Commonwealth. My understanding of option 7 is that this was an option that was created to address shortages and challenges in the pipeline for educators, and that it was to bring folks with a quote exceptional educational background into the profession. CKEC is proposing a very large expansion beyond special education. One of the things I did note was that the University of Kentucky was mentioned as a partner in this proposal, but yet that discussion, we did not have that discussion with the leaders of our college. So that was quite surprising to us. We were not aware that we had been mentioned in this proposal. But this is a very large expansion beyond special education. So my question for the staff, and I think for us as a board, is do you have the data for the critical and non-critical shortage areas for Central Kentucky? I'm aware that the state collects this data, but yet that data was not shared with us before this vote. It wasn't shared with me. I don't know if it was shared with other board members for us to review and discuss. Is that data available for us?
So yes, that data is available and posted in the KEPS system, which is allows public access. And then so that information is shared not only with districts, but then is also posted again for public viewing as well.
So here's my concern. So I had a conversation with the principal in a local Fayette County school, specifically about social studies. And that principal told me that he had 80 applications for social studies, even though the data said that there was a shortage in social studies in Lexington. Now, on the other hand, he only had, I think he told me, 5 applications for a physics position. So it makes sense to me that CKEC would be thinking about, some of the STEM fields. We have challenges at our university, and Sherry probably can share that they may also have challenges with STEM. So I also have some questions about the data based on what I'm hearing on the ground relative to this proposal. So I think for this proposal that the EPSB should carefully consider some of this data before we make this decision if we're truly thinking about option 7 for the purposes by which it was created.
And Dr. Vasquez-Heilig, this is Cassie. I would just like to jump in a little bit in regards to option 7. Yes, option 7 is one of the alternative routes to certification that was created by the General Assembly. However, in option 7 itself, it does not state that it is limited to critical shortage areas. Option 7 was created to allow a person in a field other than education to teach in elementary, middle, or secondary programs. And they did create those two institute requirements based on which grade level is that the individual is going to be teaching in. However, they did not limit to say that it is only available for special education or it is only available for an area which is determined to be a critical shortage. This is available for all certification areas by statute.
I think the other issue too is that my understanding is that at least KDE's website said this is for exceptional. But yet you've created a second tier here because the requirements for higher education are 3.0. And I think all the universities understand sort of our sacred responsibility for creating teachers, but yet the GPA here is 2.75. So I'm just worried about this back door to the profession for that purpose too. So there's several issues here. I think one is the lower standards by which folks go into these programs. 2, the fact that they're recruiting into areas where there are not critical shortages in our state. And 3rd, that we were a part of this proposal, but yet we weren't contacted about the proposal.
And with that 3rd point, I don't have any knowledge on that, so I will defer to Todd in case he knows something additional regarding that. However, with the admissions criteria, the 2.75, that is what is the EPSB has put in its guidelines that were approved by this board of what is the admissions criteria is that they have a bachelor's degree with an academic major and that be with a minimum GPA of 2.75 on a 4.0 scale or 3.0 on a 4.0 scale on the last 30 hours. And that is in line with the admissions requirements for higher education programs. That was why the board put those into the guidelines at that time. Additionally, I will point out that these individuals for the Option 7 program, by statute, it states not exceptional necessarily, but that there are persons who should be recruited into Kentucky's public schools as they have academic majors, strong verbal skills, or have shown the ability, verbal ability test, and deep knowledge of content characteristics that would give them the quality to be teachers. And then further in the requirements from the statute, as well as in the guidelines, these Option 7 candidates are going to be required to pass either the CASE or the GRE, which, as the board may remember, for other graduate level programs, so those through the EPPs, with the changes to 5020, as well as to the recent waiver that this board approved, the other graduate level programs are not required to meet those admission testing requirements anymore. However, Option 7 is held to that requirement because that is something that the legislature put in statute. So they will have to meet that requirement, as well as they have to pass the content assessment. So the Praxis 4 certification, they have to pass that prior to issuance of their first temporary provisional, whereas your Option 6 candidates, and for our other members of the board, those are going to be our candidates who are enrolled in a higher education program along with employment in a school district. They have to pass that praxis prior to their full professional certificate. So those are just a few of the differences there that I did want to highlight for the board in this discussion as well.
Okay, I have a question. Is this the first request like this that has come before the board, or are there other institutions across the state that are currently doing this same thing? I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Mr. Davis or Ms. Trueblood?
Cassie, did you want me to address that, or?
Yes, Todd, if you want to go ahead.
Okay. Yes, Madam Chair, the approval for Nelson County's program is similar in nature, with multiple contents that we approved. Actually, that was the meeting that we approved 2 proposals, which was the same as CKEC's, but then the same meeting as CKEC's initial submission, but then Nelson County was approved as well for the multiple contents.
So I think one other thing to add to this conversation, that while maybe the legislation doesn't necessarily stipulate shortage areas, the national approach for alternative certification is for shortage areas. So, before I was in Kentucky, I was in California, I was in Texas. And I think there's some broader issues here that we'll discuss later. But the situation in Texas is that in some years they have as many as 70% of new teachers are alternative certification because of these types of backdoors. So while the legislation may not specifically say that this is about shortage areas, the national conversation and the public discourse about alternative pathways is for shortage areas. And so therefore, I believe that we at the EPSB should be thinking about, if we're going to do this in Central Kentucky or other parts of the state, what are the long-term ramifications of the decisions that we make today?
Thank you, Dr. Vasquez-Heilig. I do just want to caution the board, while having that conversation and consideration, that would be a limitation that is not currently in the statute or in the guidelines that this board has issued and approved. So you will want to keep that in mind. There are some areas that are limited, with other certifications, such as your emergency certificate, which cannot be issued to an individual if there is a qualified candidate. However, that is not the case with these certifications as they are now. So just something for the board to keep in mind.
I have a comment along the same lines of what Julian is sharing. I mean, in a lot of committee or just discussion, that hasn't necessarily been through EPSB or within meetings, there has been the assumption that this is in critical shortage areas. And a lot of this discussion over the last few years has focused on those areas. And I think that's, at least at the EPP level, that has been part of the understanding. The other thing, it's kind of a different note, and but one thing that does concern me about some of this is, there's oftentimes, especially in discussions with CPE or just other areas, concerns about duplicate programs across the state and the university, and the fact that this is a problem for financial and human resources, which I think a lot of these programs, it just opens the door to more and more duplication of programs and services that then undermine some of the programs at universities or private institutions.
So my main point here is that on this particular action item, I just believe that the EPSB board should take more time to consider this particular action item. I'm not saying on this particular one that we should necessarily turn it down, I just felt like some of what was here was really surprising to me as an appointed board member. So therefore, I would like to make a motion on action item 2 to defer consideration of CKEC's option 7 proposal.
So there's a motion. Is there a second?
Sherry Powers, second.
Dr. Powers with the second. So the motion before the board is to defer consideration of CKEC's option 7 proposal in reference to action item B. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, defer, yes.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rosinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Julian Vasquez Heilig,
Julian Vasquez Heilig, approve motion to defer.
Sarah Weedman,
Sarah Weedman, approve motion to defer.
voting is complete.
Thank you, and the motion to defer on action item B passes.
Chair Rosinski, may I ask
Yes.
a quick question?
Yes.
Dr. Vasquez Heilig, is there, in this deferral, is there something specific that you would like to see from CKEC, from staff, or from the reviewers while the board is taking this extended consideration?
Is it possible to set up a meeting to discuss items to be requested? Is that possible?
Yes, we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we will have action item C, C as in Charles, and I am on page 63 of the agenda book. Item C, option 7, institute proposal, I teach, and that will be presented by Mr. Davis. Mr. Davis?
Thank you. Also an option 7 proposal. This proposal was submitted by I Teach Kentucky, which is a part of a larger corporation, I Teach US organization, which holds NCATE accreditation as effective as of 2013, which offers a blended competency-based education preparation program. It is a 270-hour institute, and that is required for all candidates, regardless of elementary or middle or secondary. The program is based on the model that I Teach program parent organization successfully piloted in Texas more than 14 years ago, and has replicated its efforts in Louisiana, Nevada, Hawaii, Washington, D.C., and Florida. Again, this program has been reviewed through the multi-tiered process, and the recommendation was made for approval. And I will take questions at this time.
Thank you. The action question before the board is, should the EPSB approve I Teach's option 7 institute proposal? Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Davis?
Could I speak on this issue also, please?
Yes, Dr. Vasquez Heilig.
So as Commissioner Glass stated this morning, we're the guardians of the teaching profession. I think part of our role as researchers is to illuminate issues that we are aware of. I think what is really troubling, so while CKEC doesn't necessarily have a public record on their work, that's why I'm very interested in looking very deeply. There is quite an extensive record about I Teach, especially in Texas, from its participants. And I think that's something that I think we should look very, very carefully at before the full consideration of iTeach. There are folks that have participated in this that have documented extensive issues with their program in Texas. And I don't think we can ignore that record. The Better Business Bureau, they're listed with the Better Business Bureau, and then there's some other information that's publicly available also. So I'm aware that this program has completed a review process and received a recommendation. However, we really are the vanguard for this Commonwealth. And so I think we also need to take a very careful look and not just rubber stamp this option 7 proposal. I think that the board should have all the information available before we make a decision also on iTeach. If we make a decision this month, or if we make a decision next month, there's really not much difference. But this proposal concerns me even more than the CKE proposal, EC proposal. There's an extensive record in the public on iTeach. I won't bring those issues up today, but I think that the board should have research conducted by the staff related to this and to confirm whether that public information is true.
Okay, thank you. So is there a motion on action item C?
I would like to make a motion that on action item C that we defer the consideration of iTeach option 7 proposal.
Dr. Vasquez Heilig with the motion. Is there a second?
Sherry Powers, second.
Dr. Powers with the second. So the motion before the board is to defer consideration of iTeach's option 7 proposal. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Chesser, will you please call the roll?
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rudzinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Julian Vasquez Heilig,
Julian Vasquez Heilig, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you. And the motion to defer on option or on action item C passes. Okay, so next we'll move on to action item D. Action item D is on page 66 of your agenda book. And we will have Ms. Young be presenting this for 16 KAR 1:030, procedures for educator certificate surrender, revocation, suspension, reinstatement, and reissuance for application denial. And it's an amendment. Ms. Young?
Thank you. Good morning. Well, you did such a good job at the title. I'm not going to repeat it. Action item D is the regulation that governs educator cases and that process. It was brought before you as an information item in August. There have been no changes made since then. It is minor revisions, mostly formatting, and you have the staff note as well as the amended regulation in your materials. Are there any questions on this regulation?
Thank you. I don't hear any questions. Is there a motion on action item D?
I make a motion to approve action item D.
Dr. Hedgepath with the motion. Is there a second?
Justin Mitchell, second.
Mr. Mitchell with the second. The motion before the board is to approve the amendment to 16 KAR 1:030. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Barry,
Diane Barry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rudzinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Julian Vasquez Heilig,
Julian Vasquez Heilig, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you, and the motion in reference to action item D passes. Moving on to action item E on page 77. Ms. Young, you will also be presenting on that. Welcome back.
Thank you. Action item E is an amendment to the procedures governing educator cases. The revised procedures were presented to you in August as well as an information item, and no changes have been made since, but you will notice in your materials that I did include a clean copy as well as one with track changes so that you can see what those final changes would look like in comparison. You'll also notice that the staff recommendation is approval, but with an effective date of December 13th, our next board meeting. And that'll just give staff time to update all of our letters and materials and give the board time to adjust to the changes before they take effect. It will also give the regulation that you approved in action item D time to get started through that LRC process because it is a lengthy process. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Young. The action question before the board on action item E is, should the EPSB approve the amendments to procedures relating to board action on an educator's certification with the staff recommendation of that effective date of December 13th, 2021? Is there a motion?
Justin Mitchell, I make a motion to approve action item E, procedures relating to the board action on an educator's certification amendment.
Beth Spradlin, I second the motion to approve the amendment to procedures for action item E.
Thank you. The motion before the board is to approve the amendment to the procedures. Mr. Mitchell, do you want to revise your amendment regarding an effective date or include an effective date in your motion?
I can. Were we saying that it was going to be effective at the next meeting? Is that correct, Chelsea?
Yes.
Okay. Do I need to? Justin Mitchell, I make a motion to approve action item E, effective at our next December meeting for procedures relating to the board action on educators certification amendment.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion before the board is to approve the amendment on action item E to become effective December 13th, I believe is the scheduled date of our next meeting, December 13th, 2021. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Barry,
Diane Barry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rudzinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Julian Vasquez Heilig,
Julian Vasquez-Heilig, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you, and the motion passes. Moving on to action item F on page 129 of the agenda book. Ms. Cassie Trueblood will be presenting on that. Ms. Trueblood.
Hey, good morning. What we have for you is in regards to 16 KAR 6010. This is the regulation for assessment prerequisites for teacher certification, and we have a statement of consideration and amended after comments regulation for this board to review. At the June 21st meeting, the EPSB approved amendments to this regulation, which again sets the testing requirements for certification. After that meeting, the regulation was filed with the Legislative Research Commission to begin the legislative process. The first part of that is a public comment period, which ran through September 30th. During that time, we did receive written comments, which are included in your materials, which really centered on the change in the praxis exam for interdisciplinary early childhood education, or IECE certification. The amendment changed the test from the interdisciplinary early childhood education exam, which is number 5023, to the education of young children, which is 5024. The comments were received from the Kentucky Division for Early Childhood that urged the EPSB to reconsider this change, especially with IECE being a shortage area. There were concerns that the new test did not properly align with the grade levels of the Kentucky certification. There are also some questions about the coverage of the special education content on the exam. After receiving the comments, staff did a deeper review of the two exams along with staff from the Education Testing Service, and is recommending that the EPSB revert back to the previous test. So to do that, and because there were comments received, the board has to file a statement of consideration, which considers those comments. That is also included in your materials, along with the amended after comments regulation, which retains the amendments from the June board meeting, except for the IECE exam, and that does revert back to the previous exam because that one is better aligned to the certificate that we offer here in Kentucky. Sharon Salzman has joined me to provide some information for you on the two exams.
Good morning. I'm going to refer to Malik McKinley from ETS. He has a PowerPoint that he's going to present to you all, just kind of going over the IECE 5023 test and the Education of Young Children test, the 5024. So I'm going to turn it over to Malik McKinley.
Thank you, Sharon. I am going to pull up the slides, and please let me know when you see them.
I can see them.
Okay.
Yes,
great.
I can see them as well.
And for some reason, just FYI, I can't see anyone while the presentation is up for some reason. So if there is a question or you want to stop me, please just share aloud. So my name is Malik McKinley. I work with Educational Testing Service. I serve as a Director of Client Relations for the Praxis program in our Professional Educator program department. And let's just kind of dive right in. I don't want to take too much of your time. Obviously, the conversation today is around 5023 and 5024. I wanted to provide just a very quick minute or 2 minute background in terms of an overview on ETS and our processes here, but then just kind of dive into the specifics around 5023 and 5024. And again, if there are any questions, please don't hesitate. For those who are new to ETS, please know that we were founded in 1947. We are a nonprofit organization. Our mission is to advance quality and equity in education for all people worldwide. We administer and develop and score millions of exams across the nation and the world every single year in 180 countries and over 9,000 locations. Exams that you'll obviously be familiar with include the Praxis series, as well as GRE. We administer the SAT and AP exams for College Board, TOEFL, and TOEIC exams. So there's a great history of assessment at ETS. In terms of Praxis, I'm assuming, just in terms of level setting, talk about the Praxis program, but assuming that everybody, we're all on the same page in terms of what Praxis is. We are offered in about 39 states across the nation and also territories around the world. We have a basic skills test, which is the core academic skills for educators exam, and then also about 90 or so subject area tests that focus on anything from elementary education to mathematics, social studies, special education. With our development process here at ETS, which is what we went through for both 5023 as well as 5024, we kind of walk through this wheel in 30 seconds or less here with the development process. We start with a National Advisory Committee, which pulls together experts across the nation in a particular academic discipline. We ask them to share with us and take a look at the standards that are in the field. We think about standards that are on the horizon or standards that are going to change, and we kind of have that conversation with those experts in the field, and that takes place here in Princeton, New Jersey. We move on to a job analysis survey where we send out to thousands of teachers across the nation knowledge and skill statements about a particular academic discipline. So when we developed 5024, we sent out hundreds of knowledge and skill statements that eventually kind of build into our test at a glance, which I'll show you in a minute. But as we send that survey out, we ask teachers to kind of respond to those knowledge and skill statements and share with us what they think is important for that academic discipline. They send that back to us, and then we share that information with the National Advisory Committee again, and then we kind of move forward into actually the not only the scaffolding of the exam, but also the build out of the entire test in part 4 here, which is test specifications. So we take those knowledge and skill statements and then we break them down further into numbered and bulleted points that you'll see in our test at a glance. And then we move into test formation. We have internal test writers as well as external test writers that we contract with on a yearly basis, and they begin to really set the test form in motion from the blueprint of the exam. We build multiple test forms so that there isn't any kind of overexposure in the field for any one test as we provide that during our examination windows. And then in part 6 and 7, obviously, as you think about the standard setting process, again, that 5023 and 5024 went through, we pull together experts in the field, whether that be K through 12 or PK through 12 teachers, as well as university faculty, as well as experts in different academic areas, and ask them to kind of review a particular form of the exam, rate the exam, very simply sharing with us whether a testing item is an easy question or whether it's a moderately difficult question or a very challenging question. And then we produce eventually a recommended cut score from the standard setting process, releasing it out into the marketplace. So that's pretty much the standard setting process. And then we share that with states, as we have done with 5024 as well. Obviously there are some concerns around the coverage of 5023 and 5024. So as we talk about that, just kind of diving in real quickly, the IECE exam 5023 focuses on, and it might be a little hard to see here, but you can see the 6 content categories here, the approximate number of questions and percentage of the exam, as well as 5024 education of young children. There are similar content categories, as well as information on how those categories are broken down. This is all available on our website, but just to kind of give you a snapshot of what that looks like, because I know we don't have much time here today. But with 5023 and 5024, 5023 is 120 minutes. And, those are 120 selected response questions delivered in a computer delivered format. With 5024, 150 minutes. There are 120 questions, but there are also 3 constructed response questions within that particular exam. So that's a combination test. As you can see here from left to right, you see the content categories, again, the percentage of the exam as noted here. In terms of what each test measures, 5023 measures knowledge and skills of prospective teachers of young children birth to kindergarten. 5024 measures the knowledge and skills of prospective teachers of young children birth to age 8. So that obviously is one of the major differences. Both of the exams, when you think about the standards that developed 5023, we use the National Association of Education of Young Children standards, Council for Exceptional Children. Those same National Association for Education of Young Children standards were used for 5024 as well. Obviously, the content was developed for 5023 by experts in the IECE area. But again, obviously, it's focused more on that IECE training that teacher candidates will receive, in their prep programs across the state of Kentucky. When you look at 5024, candidates demonstrate knowledge of teaching through the constructive responses, which require strong knowledge of the subject and evidence-based examples. So there are, this is just a few quick highlights of each exam in terms of, the content and how questions are developed based on that content. And I'll share this. I've shared these slides with Sharon if you want to kind of take a deeper dive here. But just in terms of the overall content categories, some of the questions will kind of be focused on what you see here on screen. When you look at 5023, what are some of the influences that can affect prenatal, infant, and child development? The classroom activities that are used to address learning goals, health and safety during learning and playing, self-assessing practice. How do you seek the proper professional development, understanding laws around early childhood? In terms of education of young children, how to adapt learning activities. Questions will be focused on how to use formative and summative assessments. How do you design classrooms that accommodate all students' needs? And the importance, again, of professional development. So you'll see some things that are mirrored in both exams, but obviously there are some differences between 5023 and 5024. Some of the major differences, just real quickly here, highlighted on screen. As we are talking about today, 5023 does cover birth through kindergarten, while education of young children, 5024, covers birth through around the 2nd grade or so. The special education content is much higher in 5023, around 20+% or so. In 5024, it's less than 10%, but there is some coverage of special education there. No specific coverage in 5023 for content pedagogy and knowledge, at least not a significant amount of questions, but about 24% of the exam for 5024 covers content pedagogy and knowledge in the areas of literacy and mathematics. And as I mentioned, the other major difference here is one is a multiple choice test or quote unquote selected response exam. 5024 is both selective response and constructive response. So some states, some university users, like to have constructive response as a part of their exam. So those all overall the major differences. Just wanted to share real quickly in terms of users of 5024. You can see those on screen with the associated cut scores. And 5023 users, as you can see here, listed on screen here, and I just included Kentucky because you all have used this exam, and I think this exam was, if I'm correct, I think this exam was built for Kentucky many years ago, and a few states have kind of jumped on board with 5023. So that's it for my slides. Just wanted to share real quickly that 5024 is offered with Praxis Tests at Home. So, I don't know if that's a part of the decision-making process, but just wanted to share that that test is offered at home, which means a candidate at any moment during the week can take an exam, can take the 5024 exam. All right, Sharon, I will pass it back to you. I will stop sharing unless there are any questions about the slides presented today.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Again, what staff has proposed for you, based on the comments received and a review of those tests, is that the board approve the statement of consideration and amended after comments regulation that are included in your materials that will return to the previous IECE exam 5023. Are there any questions for myself, for Malik, or for Sharon?
I don't hear any questions. Thank you to everyone for presenting that information to us today. Is there a motion on action item F?
I approve the motion that EPSB should approve the statement of consideration and amendment after comments on the regulation.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Powers. What, did I interrupt you?
No, that's okay. I was just going to say that.
I second. Julie Vasquez-Heilig.
Okay, so I have a motion from Dr. Powers and a second from Dr. Vasquez-Heilig. And the motion before the board is to approve on action item F, to approve the statement of consideration and the amended after comments regulation, which should return to the previous praxis examination. Is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none. Ms. Chesser, will you please call the roll?
Diane Berry.
Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath.
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt.
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell.
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers.
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski.
Lisa Rodzinski, approve.
Carmen Souter.
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin.
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield.
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Julian Vasquez-Heilig.
Julian Vasquez-Heilig, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you. And the motion to approve reference action item F passes. Next, we have action item G, also presented by Ms. Trueblood, and we're on page 146 of the agenda book. Ms. Trueblood?
Yes, so this action item deals with the EPSB's ongoing regulation review, which is a part of KRS Chapter 13A, and the requirements that a regulation shall expire 7 years after its last effective date, unless the agency follows the certification process to avoid expiration. The certification process that an agency must follow to avoid that expiration is that the administrative regulation is going to be reviewed in its entirety for compliance with the current law governing the subject matter of the administrative regulation, and then file a letter with the regulations compiler indicating that you want the regulation to remain in effect and that you are either certifying it as is or that you are certifying it with the intent to amend. If the certification letter states that the regulation will be amended, then the EPSB will have an additional 18 months to file that amended regulation with the regulations compiler. This is a fairly new requirement. The previous set that we did were kind of the lump sum review of all of those regulations that were filed more than 7 years ago that had that initial expiration date, and you all have worked your way through those. So now what staff will be doing is at the beginning of every school year, so going forward, most likely at the August board meeting, we will bring to you all of the regulations that are set to expire during the current school year, which is what we have for you today. There are 4 regulations that are set to expire during this school year. Those have been reviewed by program staff, and we have a recommendation for the proposed regulatory actions. Those are included on the next page of your agenda book. Again, if the regulation is listed as amend, then ultimately the EPSB will be the one that amends that. You will be filing that amendment. Staff will bring that forward to you at a future board meeting within the next 18 months to review and approve. Are there any questions about the process or the proposed regulatory actions that we've included for you today?
So, Ms. Trueblood, I do have a question regarding the budget impact in the action item information. Is that something that we need to address as a board as well, since there will be there potential for costs associated with amendments?
So those amendments or the cost associated with those is going to depend on each regulation as those come forward. Of the 4 regulations, we have 2 that we are recommending that the board will amend within the next 18 months. So when we bring those amendments to you, we will also bring the expected budgetary impact at that time. So that may be the better time to address it, because you will have more information about what that impact is going to be based on that specific regulation.
Okay, thanks. I'd also like to maybe propose an alternate to that August meeting to bring them forward, since that August meeting is so full of teacher certifications, and it usually falls at the very beginning of the school year. Is it possible for us to, in maybe the June meeting, can we project ahead? Is that too early to address that, or would it be better to take those up going forward in that June meeting?
We can do those in the June meeting, whatever the preference of the board is.
Okay. Okay, so thank you. We are on action item G. The action question before the board is, should the EPSB approve the proposed regulatory actions on KRS 13A.3102, 13A.3104, 161.020, and 161.028. And I will need a motion.
And Chair, just to clarify, those are
Yes.
the statutes of 13A that outline the process. The specific regulations are on that second page, but if the board just wants to make a motion to approve the proposed regulatory actions, that would be acceptable.
Thank you so much for correcting me on that. Thank you very much. So the action question is, should we approve proposed regulatory actions in reference to action item G? Is there a motion?
I will make a motion to approve action item G.
Thank you, Dr. Hedgepeth. Is there a second?
Carmen Souter, second that motion.
Ms. Souter with the second. Thank you. The motion before the board is to approve the regulatory actions as referenced in action item G. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rodzinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Jillian Vasquez Heilig,
Julian Vasquez Heilig, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you, and the motion on action item G passes. Moving on to our last action item H on page 148. Dr. Darnell will be presenting on that. Dr. Darnell?
Yes, so this is part of the refrain brought forth a little bit earlier in my report, and that is doing our best to support districts in rather difficult times. So this is a request to waive grade point average requirement for the issuance of emergency certification for the 2021 and 2022 school year. The rationale is we have received such waiver requests prior to bringing this to the board. So with the repetition, felt it was important to bring it before you all for consideration. The rationale is the waiver will expand the pool of emergency certified teachers for districts as many are unable to fill all vacancies with qualified teachers, unfortunately. So this will be just an opportunity to give further flexibility with the understanding that we are the arbiter of the profession, but also trying to recognize the requests of districts and how they are trying to fulfill their obligations to their students. So that is why this action item is being brought before the board for consideration.
Can I speak to this issue?
Dr. Vasquez Heilig?
Thank you. So a D average is a 1.3 GPA. I really believe that we should have a higher standard than that we have for substitutes. In a time where we're concerned about the education that students are getting during a pandemic, we're concerned about the inequality of the provision of teachers. I don't believe that the answer, Darnell just said there aren't enough qualified teachers to find, which means that we would be placing unqualified teachers. A D- is not exceptional or professional. It's not an educational professional standard we should accept. It's highly problematic. So let me just lay it out like this. Here's the headline that I do not want to see tomorrow in my local paper. EPSB allows D- teachers in Kentucky classrooms statewide. I think we should tread very carefully. This is not a standard. This is not professional.
Sure, absolutely. Dr. Vasquez Heilig, I certainly acknowledge this concern. And given trying to serve the needs of districts, it certainly has created a difficult balancing act, to say the least. It is just solely in looking at the current situation, given the exacerbated situations with pandemic response. So it is not something that we want to perhaps consider long-term, just looking at the immediate requests that have come forth from districts regarding the opportunity to fill these roles. But I certainly put this before the board for consideration.
And Dr. Darnell and Dr. Vasquez Heilig, just to follow up a little bit with this, I do believe that Dr. Darnell touched on this as well. This is not necessarily a blanket waiver request that this board would review or approve in normal times. And while I completely understand where you're coming from, Dr. Vasquez Heilig, and your position, which I think is felt by many of the members as well in regards to the GPA and to keeping that standard, we do also have the competing interest of Senate Bill 1 that was passed during the special session. And what Senate Bill 1 did was it removed the GPA requirement for emergency substitutes. So there is currently no GPA requirement in place for emergency subs for this school year. In addition, it lowered the requirements because by statute and by your regulations, 64 hours of college credit is required for an emergency sub. However, under Senate Bill 1, that is not the requirement. Those applicants can now have a high school diploma and 4 years of qualifying work experience, which is to be set by the district. Those provisions of Senate Bill 1 are in effect for the entirety of the school year, as are the provisions around classified staff. And what Senate Bill 1 allowed with classified staff is that any classified staff that was hired and employed by the district as of September 9th, when the bill was passed, they are now able to perform instructional activities without direct supervision from a certified staff member, as well as performing home and hospital instruction. With your classified staff, again, there's not going to be a GPA requirement or even a bachelor's degree requirement that you're going to have with your emergency certified staff. In addition to the emergency certification also is going to require that those individuals had to go through the character and fitness process and are held to the professional code of ethics. So this board would receive complaints against them, and that would be public action if there is action taken by this board ultimately in regards to their certification. That is not the same for classified staff. So in addition to the fact that we have received multiple requests from districts for GPA waivers, which this board has approved some on an individual case by case basis, staff was also recommending this waiver to combat the ability of the classified staff to be able to perform those instructional activities and the home and hospital instruction. So this would be a waiver that is just for this school year to increase the pool of emergency certified teachers so that districts could potentially have a certified person, albeit not the certification level that we're wanting, but that they would have a certified person in place who has been held to a character and fitness review, who is held to the professional code of ethics, that would be able to fill that position for the school year. I'd also like to remind the board that emergency certificates are limited in their scope, and a district is only able to request an emergency certificate when there is not a qualified candidate. So these are districts that have posted these positions. Again, posting is actually not a requirement for this school year under Senate Bill 1. That was a legislative action that's outside of the scope of this office. However, most cases, these districts have posted these positions. They are unable to find a qualified person, and so they are at their last request here as far as a certified person who would be held to the code of ethics and to the character and fitness review. So some competing interests there for you to consider.
So go ahead, please.
No, I was just saying, and also just speaking on behalf of school administrators. I mean, it is a very difficult time right now filling these positions. And I sit in that role, and this would definitely alleviate a lot of stress that our teachers and our schools are feeling at this time, just to get us through the remainder of this school year.
So I think many of us are aware of the changes that the legislature made. I think having classified professionals teaching and having no standards for substitutes is problematic, but that's the decision that the legislature made. But what's before us today, the onus is on us as an education professional standards board. Now, the thing is that this proposal is wide open. It's wide open in that you, like I said, you could have someone that had a 1.3 GPA in this role. Now, this motion didn't come to us with a limit of a 2.0 or a 2.25 or a 2. It's wide open. And so literally, you could have D- teachers because there's no limit in this action item. There's none. It's wide open.
And that is correct. The action item does not place a limitation. It removes that GPA requirement. However, the applicants would still have to meet the other requirements. So they do have to have a bachelor's degree, which is in place, which is not a requirement for your classified staff or your emergency subs. But yes, it is open. The current regulatory requirement for those certified teachers is a 2.5 GPA. And so we have received requests. I believe we have at least 4 districts for just this board meeting that had already submitted requests prior to this. There's been some additional requests received since then that even with that 2.5, they were not able to find people with that 2.5. They were looking to request a waiver of that as well. So yes, it is open. The board could potentially limit that if you wanted. You do have the ability to approve the waiver as is. And again, all members would have the ability to vote as they wish on that, as you do with any motion. And then you have the ability to deny as well. The approval, yes, is going to open the GPA requirement, and ultimately, again, we're hoping that it would give districts more certified people to combat the need for classified staff who aren't held to those standards. But again, it does lower the standards, and it is this board lowering the standards as well with the need or with the intention to meet the needs of districts. So that is the question before you.
There isn't a standard, right? If there's no limit, then there is no standard.
Well, there's still a standard of qualification.
Right, you have to have a degree, but there's no GPA standard. Like we're literally taking the standard away.
That is, there is no GPA. There is the requirement for the bachelor's degree, and ultimately it would be up to districts what they are willing to accept for a GPA based upon the needs that they are seeing. And I know we've got some additional hand raised. So,
Ms. Whedon?
Would it, I know that we're kind of talking about this being for the remainder of the year. Is it a possibility? I would like to talk about the 1.3, maybe moving that up. Would it be possible, though, that we only allowed this until the end of 2021, and in December we could revisit this at the board meeting and maybe have some input onto if removing this was helpful for districts in filling the role? Would it be possible to kind of do that, I guess, like at a midpoint to go back and review before we extend this for an entire school year? Is that a possibility?
Yes. So the if that was the course of action that the board decided to take, you could approve the motion for the fall 2021 semester. Now, the certificates that would have been issued during that time, because of the emergency certificate is valid for a school year. So those would be valid during that school year. However, no additional certificates would be issued under this action until the board made a determination. And that's something that we could bring back to you with some additional data and look at the December meeting.
I think that's something I would like to propose if people are wanting to go that route. And I understand those people that would be put in would be teaching, the rest of the year. But I think I would like some input from others on how this was actually going, if this was successful, because I also, being in the school, know that sometimes it might not be as helpful as we imagined it might be. So I think maybe if we do move forward with this, putting a limitation to where we could get some insight and data on how it actually is going, rather than being stuck with it for a full year.
Madam Chair.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. Do we know how many people have not qualified that have applied? Like, what is the pool that we're talking about with these districts? Do we have any numbers? Is it 5? Is it 500? And then secondly, I just would like to say that the motion that if there's action brought before the board in whatever form that motion is taking, that's what we would be voting on. So if there's discussion or interest in setting a floor GPA, I think that it would have to be included in a motion and then seconded, and then obviously the board would take action on that as we go forward, unless I'm incorrect on that, Ms. Trueblood.
Yes, so in making the motion for this, so now if the board wants to just outright deny this action, then that is the motion in itself is just going to be that you want to deny. If you wanted to approve it as is, then that would be your motion to approve as is. However, if you're wanting to approve a waiver with a limitation GPA, then that's how we would make the motion. So for example, if we were wanting to say limit it to a 1.5 GPA, it would be, it would be that the board moves to approve the waiver of the GPA requirement for emergency certified teachers in 16 KAR 2120 on the condition that the applicant have a minimum 1.5 GPA. So we would be terming that as a conditional waiver. And if that is the route we want to go, I can help make that motion when we get to that point as well. To Ms. Weidman's point, if it is that you are wanting to approve the waiver just for this semester, then it would be that you are voting to approve the waiver for the fall 2021 semester. And then we would bring that additional information back to you at the December meeting. As far as requests that we have already received, we have received 4 districts this time prior to this being added as an action item. So once it was added as an action item, that's going to deter any additional requests coming into us because they know that it's already an action item. And in addition, the last few years, we have seen this request through the individual waiver process. I believe we received some for this school year at an earlier meeting. I apologize, I don't have those numbers in front of me at the moment. But Dr. Powers may remember that we have had some of these on the waiver committee as well that have been approved. Typically, these have been individuals that are seeking to raise their GPA for admission to an educator preparation program, typically for admission to an option 6 program, so that they can pursue full certification. That's not always the case, and I can't guarantee that. That is just where we have seen this, and it has been approved by the board in the past.
And did those districts that made the request before we added it onto the agenda, did they specify any number of potential applicants that did not meet that, would have qualified otherwise except for that GPA threshold not being met? I'm just curious as the numbers that we're talking about.
I don't have those specific numbers at this time. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
You know, I do think we are talking about probably a smaller pool. I mean, it's still a large number of waiver requests that we're receiving for the same thing. But again, this is a last resort for districts as far as the certified teaching route. You know, obviously they're looking for those fully certified candidates, and when they cannot find those is when they're having to pursue the emergency certification.
I think I saw Dr. Vasquez-Highleg's hand up.
I don't want to jump in front of Dean Powers. I can wait until after the dean.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't see yours, Dr. Powers.
Yes, but one of the things that I think is an advantage of it going through the waiver committee rather than just being a blanket approval is the fact that we do a deeper dive into the situation, look very specifically at each candidate's materials they submit, their even down to their transcripts. And so it's not like these districts do not have a process that's already approved and in place for these types of approvals and waivers.
Okay, Dr. Vasquez-Heilig.
Yes, I concur with Dean Powers. We do have a process for this, that we can consider these carefully. And I also think that to your point, what is the scale? We don't really know the data. We're kind of reaching for straws on this one because, in the specific in the board documents, it says some district. Is that 3? Is that 10? Is that 20? And are we talking about districts hiring 100 people? 10? 2? So the scale could also lend itself to a cap. That districts would have a cap of 2 or 3 or 5 or 10. I just think it's very difficult for us to make these decisions, this decision, and the option 7 decisions, without having some very specific data that informs us as a board, so that we can meet our responsibility to the Commonwealth.
I believe Tracy also has her hand raised.
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was stated a second ago, Cassie, that if this were to pass in our body here, the governance would still live with the board of the individual boards who could make it more stringent. Is that correct?
Yes, so ultimately it would be up to the districts. The way that the waiver is here of just waiving the GPA requirement in its entirety, that would leave it up to the individual districts about what GPA they are comfortable hiring. However, if you were to limit the waiver to a specific GPA, so say here, because 2.5 is what is currently in the regulation, if you limited the waiver to make it a conditional waiver of 1.5 or even higher than that, if that we're not comfortable with that, of a 2.0, then that is just the minimum. A district could still decide that they're not comfortable hiring somebody at a 2.0. These emergency certificates are all conditioned upon hiring from the districts. It's not just a blanket emergency that's handed to that person.
So I guess I would be remiss being an administrator representative for high schools to not say that I think we have to be careful about what a GPA really measures. And so I don't know that we can tangibly even discuss that. And those of us that are in the trenches daily, not having enough coverage, not having enough folks in vacancies, not having enough substitute teachers, etc. I feel like our job on this board is to have these open conversations and not provide any more barriers for our district than what are already in place. And I just feel like going through and I'm on the waiver committee, but I feel like just going through that process, we are prolonging this, and that is not what is best for our students right now. They need, and I also feel like that if you entrust me to be in charge of 2,400 students and 220 employees, because that's my building, then I should also have the jurisdiction to determine who is right and fit to be with my students, because a 1.5 GPA does not necessarily denote that they aren't what's best for my students.
Thank you. Dr. Hedgepeth, I think you had your hand up as well.
Yes. In regard to the GPA, and as a chief academic officer for a university, no one graduates from my university unless they have a 2.0. So that's typical. I'm sure there may be some exceptions if that helps at all in this discussion. And knowing that, I can't imagine anyone walking across the stage with a 1.3 GPA, but I'm sure it's happened. But I do, Tracy, you and I are kind of like-minded on this. I was thinking about the timing. Because academics are very important to me as well. But if we do, require the waiver, what does that do with the timing? There's not much time here. And by the end of the school year in 2022, if you're on an emergency certificate, it's below a 2.5, you can't continue unless you get it back up there, correct? I mean, that's my interpretation. So they can't go into a second year of an emergency certificate in 22-23 without at least a 2.5. It does move back, right? It goes back to the original. So that makes me more comfortable. So that gives them, it takes away the time issue. And also, if the minimum GPA is an issue here, I do anticipate that everyone with an undergraduate degree has at least a 2.0.
Go ahead.
And that is a limitation that this board can put in place if you want to. Again, that would limit what districts have the ability to do, but that is within your ability. And I have heard from Crystal Horde, who has received these requests, and that the requests that she has seen so far in paper, now again, that is prior to this being added as an item which could have deterred future requests, but the ones that she has seen so far, a 2.0 would meet the needs for all of them if that is something that this board is wishing to consider.
Dr. Darnell, did you want to add something as well?
Oh, thank you. Well, certainly the expediency is the problem when you have to go before the waiver committee. Value it. I think it is extremely important, but it does create an expediency problem. And, you know, remember also that there's a show cause that the district must reveal. You know, certainly this, granted, not everyone is always making the best decisions in the interests of the students, but you know, in that rare occasion, I believe this is not ideal. I don't think anyone feels it's ideal, but the complications given current circumstances certainly have exacerbated what we would like to consider as normal practice. So certainly this is in no way meant to devalue the importance of the academic expectations. That certainly is of no mind at all. It is just simply trying to work with the district requests, albeit there are not many. It is a less than 5 request at this time. So we're not receiving an abundance, if you will, but it would just be for this 21-22 school year.
Thank you. Okay, so I don't see any other hands up. Does anyone else have any questions? Or does anyone have a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we set a minimum standard of 2.0 for the GPA.
Okay, Dr. Vasquez Heilig. So the motion would be to reduce the minimum GPA requirements in 16 KAR 2:120 section 2 subsection 7 for issuance of emergency teaching certificates for the is your motion include the entire school, the remainder of the school year, Dr. Vasquez Heilig?
Yes, only for this school year.
For this, okay, for the remainder of the 21-22 school year, set a minimum GPA of 2.0. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm in the motion. And then
Sure.
Also that at the end of the year, we receive a report from KDE on the usage of this approach.
Okay, so now I'm going to have a technical question for Ms. Trueblood. Have we stated that motion correctly? Or
yes, that
technically
yes,
correctly.
No, that was very way to go, Chair Rosinski. That was a very thorough motion, and with the inclusion of the report, we have made note of that and can bring that back to you at the end of the school year. And thank you all very much for this discussion. It helps us in knowing how to help you.
So I have a motion. Is there a second?
Sarah Weedman, I second the motion.
Okay, so thank you, Ms. Weedman, for the second. So the motion before the board is let me state it correctly for the record, to reduce the GPA waiver for emergency certified teachers in KRS or 16 KAR 2:120, section 2, subsection 7, to a minimum 2.0 on a 4.0 scale for issuance of emergency teaching certificates for the 2021-2022 school year only, and request KDE, OELE, provide a report at the end of the school year regarding the numbers of these certificates issued. Dr. Vasquez-Heilig, did I state your motion inclusively?
Yes, can we just say the numbers and areas in which these were used?
So a complete data reporting of every emergency teaching certificate issued for the entire 21-22 school year.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, will you please call the roll?
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rodzinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Julian Vasquez-Heilig,
Julian Vasquez-Heilig, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weidman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you. And the motion on action item H carries or passes. So next, the board is ready to move on to review waiver requests. KRS 161.028 subsection 1 letter N provides that the board has the authority to waive its administrative regulations when a request is submitted by an applicant for certification, a post-secondary institution, or a superintendent of a local school district. When requesting a waiver, the requesting party must submit to the board a written request along with the appropriate justification for the waiver. EPSB staff has reviewed the waivers with the EPSB's Waiver Committee during an open meeting held immediately prior to this meeting, and the Waiver Committee has formulated recommendations. Crystal Horde will present the waiver request to the full board, and Waiver Committee Chair Dr. Sherry Powers will present the committee's recommendations for final action. We will start with Waiver A. Ms. Horde.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Waiver A, let me change my screen here. Waiver A is a request to waive Regulation 16 KAR 2010. This request is made by Bell County Schools. This has been a waiver they have requested several years prior due to their K-8 instructional setting or their school configuration. Many of their teachers in the K-8 schools historically have taught down to fourth grade in their content area, and this has been a waiver that has previously been approved. As teacher retirements have occurred, they are hiring more teachers who have the elementary certification that can serve those fourth grade students, but they still have two teachers who are certified 5 through 9 who have been historically teaching down to fourth grade in their content area, Tina Tipton and Sarah Napier. And the district is asking for a waiver of the grade range requirements of 2010 for the 21-22 school year.
Lisa, I think you're muted.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Powers. Does the Waiver Committee have a recommendation on Waiver A?
Yes, the Waiver Committee met this morning to review the waiver requests submitted by Bell County Schools. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waivers, and therefore the committee recommends that the board approve the waiver request.
Thank you. This item is on the agenda for action, and I will need a motion in reference to waiver A.
Beth Spradlin, make a motion to approve waiver A.
Thank you. Ms. Spradlin, is there a second?
Donna Hedgepath, second.
Dr. Hedgepath with the second. The motion before the board is to approve waiver A. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Barry,
Diane Barry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rudzinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Sarah Weedman,
Sarah Weedman, approve.
voting is complete.
Thank you. I guess Dr. Vasquez-Heilig had to leave. I was just following up on my list. So that motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have waiver B.
Yes, waiver B. Actually, the next four waivers, the next four waivers are the same request. They are all going to be a waiver of 16 KAR 2120. That regulation allows an individual who has a previous one emergency certification, if that emergency certificate was issued after February 15th of the year, or if it was issued for less than 50% of that person's class schedule, to hold and receive a subsequent emergency certificate in the future. For these next four that I will mention individually, they've all had a second emergency already, either under the allowances of the reg or by a previous board waiver. Now these districts are all asking for a third emergency waiver, a waiver of this regulation, so these individuals can have a third emergency for the 21-22 school year. So waiver B, Scott County Schools is requesting a waiver for a third emergency for Amanda Covert. She is currently certified in elementary education, middle school math, and English. She has been serving in the high school math position last year and has been rehired in that position for the current year due to the lack of certified applicants for secondary math. The district is requesting a third emergency certificate for the current year.
And I'm muted again. Thank you, Dr. Powers. Does the waiver committee have a recommendation on waiver B?
The Waiver Committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by Scott County Schools. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the board grant the waiver.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve waiver B.
Thank you, Dr. Hedgepath. Is there a second?
Carmen Souter seconds that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Souter. The motion before the board is to approve waiver B. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, will you please call the roll?
Diane Barry,
Diane Barry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Brzezinski,
Lisa Rudzinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you. And the motion on waiver B passes. At this point, I'm going to step away for just a moment and I will ask Vice Chair Mitchell to continue with waiver C.
All right, moving on to waiver C, 16 KAR 2120, request to waive emergency certificate requirements for Martha Day. Ms. Hord?
Thank you. So waiver C is requested on behalf of Martha Day by Woodford County Schools. Ms. Day holds lifetime certification in the area of agriculture education, instructional leadership principal, and vocational supervision. For the past 2 years, she has been emergency certified in the area of special education, learning and behavior disorders, to serve as their home hospital services for general ed and special ed students who are in their home hospital program. Due to a shortage of special ed teachers, Woodford County Schools is requesting a third emergency certificate so she can continue to serve in this role for the 21-22 school year.
Dr. Powers, do you have a report from the Waiver Committee?
The Waiver Committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by Woodford County Schools. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the board grant the waiver.
At this time, I need a motion.
I offer a motion that we approve waiver C.
Thank you, Wade Stanfield. I need a second.
Carmen Souter seconds that motion.
Thank you, Carmen Souders. The motion before the board is to request a waive of emergency certificate requirements for Martha Day. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Brzezinski, Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Sarah Weedman. Voting is complete.
I'm sorry, Justin. This is Cassie. We are going to need one more vote on that. Okay, Sarah.
Yes, I'm approve. Motion to.
Okay.
And I believe that makes us have quorum and the motion passes. Moving on to waiver D, 16 KAR 2120, request to waive emergency certificate requirements for Corey Martin. Ms. Ford?
Yes, thank you. Waiver D is requested for on behalf of Mr. Corey Martin by Johnson County Schools. The district had a certified moderate severe teacher who, after the first 3 days of school, unexpectedly resigned. The district reposted the vacancy, and Mr. Martin was the only applicant who applied. He's previously held 2 emergency certificates, even though one of them was only for the second half of the school year. However, it was issued prior to the February 15th requirement in regulation. So the district is requesting this waiver so that they can hire him on a third emergency for the remainder of the current school year.
Thank you. Dr. Powers, do you have a report from the Waiver Committee?
The Waiver Committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by Johnson County Schools. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. and therefore the committee recommends that the board grant the waiver.
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Carmen Souter grants permission to approve waiver D by Johnson County Schools.
Thank you, Ms. Souter. Do I have a second?
Beth Spradlin with the second.
Thank you, Ms. Spradlin. The motion before the board is to request a waive of the emergency certificate requirements for Corey Martin. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you. And the motion passes. Next, we have waiver E, 16 KAR 2120, requests to waive emergency certificate requirements for Sarah Stricka. Ms. Hord?
Yes, thank you. Waiver E is the final waiver we have of 16 KAR 2120. This one is requested by Gallatin County Schools on behalf of Miss Sarah Strelka in the area of middle school science. Ms. Strelka previously held emergency certificates in 2002-2003 school year and the 2003-2004 school year, and then very briefly at the end of 2004-2005 school year. However, that was prior to the limit of emergency certifications being in place. At that time, additional emergency certifications only required 6 semester hours of additional coursework in order to qualify for a subsequent emergency. Due to a long-term illness with the school's science teacher and lack of qualified applicants for the position, the district is requesting a subsequent issuance of an emergency certificate for Ms. Strelka for the 21-22 school year.
Dr. Powers, do you have a report from the Waiver Committee?
The Waiver Committee reviewed the waiver request submitted by Gallatin County Schools. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the board grant the waiver.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Is there a motion?
I'd like to offer a motion of approval for a waiver G.
E.
Waiver.
I'm sorry, is that the right one? Let's see.
We're on waiver E at the moment.
Yeah, my bad. Waiver E, Ms. Stricker, yes.
Great, thank you, Mr. Stanfield. Do I have a second?
Sarah Weedman, I second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Weedman. The motion before the board is to request a waiver for emergency certificate requirements for Sarah Strelka. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rosinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you. And waiver E passes. And back over to Chair Rosinski.
Thank you very much. Moving on to waiver F. Ms. Hord.
Thank you. The next 3 waivers that you will hear are all requesting waivers of 16 KAR 4030, which requires out-of-state prepared educators to possess an equivalent certification from the state or jurisdiction where the applicant completed his or her educator preparation program. Waiver F is requested by Owensboro Independent Schools on behalf of Miss Caitlin Rhodes. She has been hired as a middle school English teacher on an emergency certification for the prior 2020-2021 school year. Miss Rhodes completed her teacher ed program in Indiana. We have received her recommendation for program completion. However, she did not take the she did take the Indiana test, but did not pass the Indiana requirements and thus obtain the Indiana equivalent certification, which is required by 4030. She has taken the Kentucky required praxis tests for her PLT and her English content exam and has passed our test. Owensboro Independent would like, they've recognized the tremendous job she's done in this role, and they are requesting the EPSB approve this waiver so she can receive the full professional certificate for Kentucky.
Thank you. Dr. Powers, does the Waiver Committee have a recommendation on Waiver F?
The Waiver Committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the board grant the waiver.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I'd offer a motion for approval.
Thank you. Mr. Stanfield, with the motion of approval on Waiver F, is there a second?
Sarah Weidman, I second the motion.
Thank you, Ms. Weidman. There's a motion and a second. The motion before the board is to approve Waiver F. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, will you please call the roll?
Diane Berry.
Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath.
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt.
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell.
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers.
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski.
Lisa Rudzinski, approve.
Carmen Souter.
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin.
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield.
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Sarah Weidman.
Sarah Weidman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you. And the motion in reference to Waiver F passes. Moving on to Waiver G. And just to kind of help myself, we're on page 193 of the agenda book. Waiver G. Ms. Horde.
Waiver G is requested by Miss Emily Hackman. She has been hired as a speech language pathologist in Boone County Schools for the 21-22 school year. She is a recent graduate of the Masters in Communication Disorders program from University of Cincinnati. However, since she is a Kentucky resident and she was seeking employment in the state of Kentucky, she did not pursue the Ohio testing requirements to obtain the equivalent certificate in the state of Ohio. She did, however, apply for and receive her professional license through the Kentucky Speech Pathology and Audiology Board. And she also took the equivalent test for Kentucky that are required for her teacher preparation program, and she passed both tests. So she is requesting this waiver so she can receive the full professional certificate in Kentucky.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. What is the recommendation of the Waiver Committee?
The Waiver Committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the board grant the waiver.
Thank you. Is there a motion on Waiver G?
Justin Mitchell, I make a motion to approve the waiver for letter G.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Carmen Souter seconds that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Souter. The motion before the board is to approve waiver G. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Barry,
Diane Barry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rudzinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Stanfield, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you. And the motion on waiver G passes. Next, we have waiver H. Waiver H. Ms. Hord.
Waiver H is identical to waiver G that you just heard. This one is requested by Miss Catherine Walker. She too has been hired as a speech language pathologist in Boone County Schools for the 21-22 school year. She's also a recent graduate from the same program at the University of Cincinnati and is also a Kentucky resident and was seeking employment in the state of Kentucky. So she did not pursue the Ohio certification, the equivalent certification. She did, however, apply for and receive the Kentucky Board for Speech Pathology and Audiology license, the occupational license, and she also took and passed the required test for Kentucky certification, and those scores were submitted as well. And therefore, she is requesting also a waiver of this same regulation.
Thank you. Dr. Powers, what is the recommendation of the waiver committee?
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the board grant the waiver.
Thank you. Is there a motion on waiver H?
Carmen Souter makes a motion to approve waiver H.
Thank you, Ms. Souter. Is there a second?
Diane Barry, second.
Thank you, Ms. Berry, with the second. The motion before the board is to approve waiver H. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Barry,
Diane Barry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rudzinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you. And the motion on waiver H passes. Moving on to waiver I. Ms. Hord.
Thank you. The next three waivers are very similar in that they are all requesting a waiver of 16 KAR 6010, Section 4, which is the test recency or the recency of the test administration date. 6010 Section 4 states that tests for certification are valid for 5 years from the assessment administration date. And each of these waivers, you will see that their scores are beyond that date. For waiver I, Western Kentucky University is requesting this waiver on behalf of Miss Brittany Kane. She completed a dual certification bachelor's program for middle school English English Language Arts, and Social Studies in 2014. At the time she completed the program, she had passed the PLT and her middle school social studies content exam. However, at that time, WKU required all dual cert program completers to pass all required tests before they would recommend the candidate for certification. WKU no longer has that policy and now recommends individual certifications even if the candidate hasn't passed for all areas. WKU is requesting that the EPSB approve this waiver since the scores are still less than 10 years old and the ETS website indicates that their scores are valid and accessible for 10 years.
Thank you. Dr. Powers, does the Waiver Committee have a recommendation on waiver I?
The Waiver Committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by Western Kentucky University. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the board grant the waiver.
Thank you. Is there a motion on waiver I?
Carmen Souter makes a motion to approve waiver I.
Okay, I heard you, Ms. Souter, with the motion. And was there a second? I couldn't tell who that was.
Wade Stanfield seconds.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stanfield, with the second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Chesser, will you please call the roll on waiver I?
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rudzinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you. And the motion on waiver I passes. Next, we have waiver J. Waiver J. Ms. Horde.
Waiver J is also requested by WKU. This one is on behalf of Miss Catherine Gray. Miss Gray completed a master's in communication disorders in April of 2013, at which time Western Kentucky University still offered the teacher preparation track for speech language pathologists. Miss Gray passed the required test that she needed in 2013. However, she failed to apply for the teaching certificate at that time and is just now seeking her certification. WKU is requesting that the EPSB approve this request since her test scores are still less than 10 years old and ETS recognizes scores being valid for 10 years.
Thank you, Ms. Horde. Dr. Powers, what is the recommendation of the Waiver Committee?
The Waiver Committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by Western Kentucky University. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the board grant the waiver.
Thank you. Is there a motion on waiver J?
Donna Hedgepath, make a motion for waiver J.
Dr. Hedgepath with the motion, and is there a second?
Beth Spradlin, second.
And Ms. Spradlin with the second. Thank you. The motion before the board is to approve waiver J. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rudzinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Sarah Weedman,
Sarah Weidman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you. And the motion on waiver J passes. Next, we have waiver K. Ms. Hord.
Thank you. Waiver K is the final waiver of 6010. This one is requested by Miss Contessa Vick. She graduated from Eastern Kentucky University's Master's Program for Communication Disorders several years ago. In 2016. At that time, she had only taken the speech language pathology content exam. However, she had not taken the special education core knowledge and applications test. Therefore, the university did not recommend her for certification at that time due to lack of that second test. She did apply for and receive her license with the Kentucky Board of Speech Pathology and Audiology, which is the occupation board for speech therapists, as well as her ASHA certification. And she began working in the clinical settings and has done so for the past 5 years. She recently took and passed the special education core knowledge test that she was lacking, but upon application for certification, she was informed that her other score had expired. It met the 5-year recency test date in April of 21. So she is requesting that the board approve her waiver request to allow the expired test score to stand so that she can be issued the professional certificate.
Thank you. Dr. Powers, does the waiver committee have a recommendation on waiver K?
Yes. Also, I recused myself from the waiver committee's recommendation and review process, but I am going to read the waiver committee recommendation to the board.
Thank you, Dr. Powers.
The waiver committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver. Therefore, the committee recommends that the board grant the waiver.
Thank you. Is there a motion on waiver K?
Carmen Souter makes a motion to approve waiver K.
Thank you, Ms. Souter. Is there a second?
Beth Spradlin, second.
Thank you, Ms. Spradlin, with the second. The motion before the board is the approval of waiver K. Any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Berry.
Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath.
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt.
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell.
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers.
Sherry Powers, I recuse myself.
Lisa Rosinski.
Lisa Rosinski, approve.
Carmen Souter.
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin.
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield.
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Sarah Weidman.
Sarah Weidman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you. And the motion on waiver K passes. Last, we have waiver L. Ms. Hord.
Thank you. Waiver L is our final waiver today. It is a request to waive the requirements for rank 2 and rank 1 based on a previous program. Requirements in 16 KAR 8010 and 16 KAR 8020. This request is made by Russell County Schools on behalf of Miss Whitney Coe. She is currently enrolled in an Option 6 program at Northern Kentucky University, leading to the moderate severe disabilities certification. She previously completed a master's degree in mental health counseling from Lindsey Wilson College, which was a 60-hour master's program. Since 2017, she's been employed as a licensed professional counselor specializing in child therapy. Ms. Coe and Russell County Schools are requesting that her previous master's degree be recognized for issuance of rank 1 and rank 2, as the degree is directly related to her MSD certification and the children that she serves. And Russell County would like to pay her at the higher level rank based on this degree.
Thank you. Dr. Powers, what is the recommendation of the Waiver Committee on Waiver L?
The Waiver Committee reviewed the waiver request and supporting documentation submitted by the applicant. The committee found exceptional circumstances justifying the waiver, and therefore the committee recommends that the board grant the waiver.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Is there a motion?
Carmen Souter makes a motion to approve waiver L.
Thank you, Ms. Souter, with the motion. Is there a second?
Beth Spradlin, second.
Thank you, Ms. Spradlin. There is a motion and a second before the board. The motion to approve waiver L. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, will you please call the roll?
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rodzinski, yes.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you, and the motion passes. And thank you, Ms. Horde, for all of your work. Next, we have one alternative route to certification application. This applicant is pursuing the option 1, exceptional work experience route to certification. This is one of the alternative routes established by the legislature in KRS 161.048. An applicant with exceptional work experience must have an offer of employment from a local school district, a bachelor's or graduate's degree meeting minimum GPA requirements, and an academic major or a passing score on the academic content assessment in the area in which the certification is being sought. The board will need to determine if the applicant's work experience constitutes exceptional work experience. This application will be presented by Ms. Horde. Welcome back.
Thank you. Long time. This application was submitted by Christian County Schools on behalf of Miss Melanie Meek. I'm sorry, I knew it was an M name. Christian County Schools is hiring Miss Melanie Meek through the option 1 alternative route for their chemistry, their secondary chemistry position. Miss Meek has over 10 years of work experience in the chemistry field. She has served as a graduate research assistant in the chemistry lab. She has the background documentation that was included with your all's with the agenda book has kind of outlines. I will not do it justice, but inert gas vacuum shank line utilizing nuclear magnetic resonance to study the structure of phosphine compounds. She has a lot of experience in the chemistry field. She also has a bachelor's and a master's degree in chemistry. Her GPA far exceeded the requirement for this route. And since she also has a major in the content area that she's getting certified, there was no requirement for her to pass the content assessment. All materials for this application were present and accounted for, and upon our review, she meets all requirements for this route.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Horde? If not, I will need a motion on alternate route number A, or letter A, I should say.
Madam Chair, I would offer a motion or approval on alternate route to certification for applicant for number A, Melanie Meek.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stanfield. Is there a second?
Justin Mitchell, second.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mitchell. Mr. Mitchell. The motion before the board is to approve the application on Melanie Meek. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, will you please call the roll?
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rosinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weidman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you, and the motion passes. I will now open the floor to any board member for board comments. Does anyone have anything they wish to share? Alrighty, I don't see any hands. So at this time, I believe we are ready to enter into closed session pursuant to KRS 61.810 subsection 1C and J to conduct character and fitness reviews and to review potential actions related to complaints and reports. The board will also review pending litigation. At this time, I will need a motion to go into closed session.
Justin Mitchell, I make a motion to go into closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Is there a second?
Sarah Weidman, I second the motion.
Thank you very much, Ms. Weidman. The motion before the board is a motion to enter into closed session. Any discussion? Hearing none, Ms. Chesser, please call the roll.
Diane Berry,
Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath,
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt,
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell,
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Sherry Powers,
Sherry Powers, approve.
Lisa Rosinski,
Lisa Rosinski, approve.
Carmen Souter,
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin,
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield,
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weidman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you, and the motion passes. We are now ready to move into closed session. We are now back in open session. At this time, we will vote on those items discussed during the closed session. Character and fitness. Number 1, approve. 2, deny. 3 and 4, approve. 5 and 6, deny. 7 through 19, approve. CA4 online, character and fitness. 1 through 4, approve. 5 and 6, deny. 7 through 10, approve. 11, deny. 12 through 19, approve. 20, defer. 21, approve. And 22, deny. Agreed orders. 1 through 15, accept. Motions to reconsider. Number 1, deny. Educator cases. Number 1, admonish. 2, defer for training in educator ethics and educator student boundaries. 3 through 14, attorney review. 15, defer for training on certified evaluation plans, district policy on weapons protocol and reporting, and leadership in education. 16, attorney review. 17, defer for training, virtual instruction, classroom management, and instructional design. 18, attorney review. 19, admonish and train, and I don't have the training written down on that. Cassie, do you?
We had attorney review.
On 19? Oh, thank you very much. 19, attorney review. I just marked the wrong box. 20, dismissed. 21, admonish and train. COVID protocols, parental communication, and cultural sensitivity. 22 and 23, dismiss. 24, defer for training, admin code. 25 through 28. 25 through 28, dismiss. 29 and 30, defer for training, admin code. 31 through 37, dismiss. 38, defer for training, admin code. 39 through 42, dismiss. 43 through 45, defer for training, admin code. 46 through 49, dismiss. 50 and 51, defer for training, admin code. 52, dismiss. 53, attorney review. 54, defer for training, OEA required training. 55 through 58, refer to hearing. 59, dismiss. 60 and 61, defer for 3 months. 62, attorney review. 63 and 64, no further action. 65 through 67, attorney review. 68 through 72, admonish. 73 and 74, attorney review. 75 through 77, no further action. And 78 through 89, dismiss.
Diane Berry.
Diane Berry. Diane Berry, agree in all.
Donna Hedgepath.
Donna Hedgepath, approve on all.
Tracy Hunt.
Tracy Hunt, approve on all.
Justin Mitchell.
Justin Mitchell, approve on all.
Lisa Ruzinski.
Lisa Ruzinski on CA4 online character and fitness number 20, recuse. The rest approve.
Carmen Souter.
On Educator case 1405291, recuse and approve on all others.
Beth Spradlin.
Beth Spradlin, agree all.
Wade Stanfield.
Wade Stanfield, approve on all.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approve on all.
Voting is complete.
Thank you. I would like to remind the board that the next meeting will be on Monday, December 13th, 2021. And we will advise we will give further guidance on the location or format of that meeting as we get closer to that time frame. At this time, I will need a motion to adjourn.
I'd like to offer a motion of adjournment.
Mr. Stanfield with the motion. Thank you. Do I have a second?
Carmen Souter seconds that motion.
Thank you. The motion before the board is a motion to adjourn. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Ms. Sharp, will you please call the roll?
Diane Berry.
Diane Berry, approve.
Donna Hedgepath.
Donna Hedgepath, approve.
Tracy Hunt.
Tracy Hunt, approve.
Justin Mitchell.
Justin Mitchell, approve.
Lisa Ruzinski.
Lisa Ruzinski, approve.
Carmen Souter.
Carmen Souter, approve.
Beth Spradlin.
Beth Spradlin, approve.
Wade Stanfield.
Wade Stanfield, approve.
Sarah Weedman.
Sarah Weedman, approve.
Voting is complete.
Thank you. We are now adjourned.